I enjoy being a mechanic as much as I do a pilot. And that combination is what makes it work. So those two combined just fascinates me tremendously. The challenge of not only flying this, but keeping it going as a mechanic, and then making it fulfill the mission, the educational role of what took place in Berlin, 1948, 1949.
Following the death of Adolf Hitler and the fall of the Third Reich, a defeated Germany was divided among France, Britain, the United States, and Soviet Russia. 2.5 million Eastern Berliners, situated on the wrong side of the Soviet line, were separated from their families and friends, and food was in limited supply. The city was dilapidated from the waning war, and a looming enemy in Joseph Stalin posed a threat to his former allies and the long-awaited liberation of the German public. 3 air corridors were all that remained open in the supply link to Berlin. Instead of abandoning the Berlin people, the United States and the United Kingdom combined forces to provide them with food and supplies, in direct opposition to the wishes of Soviet Premier Stalin. Succeeding the C-47, 330 C-54 aircraft, built for long-range transport, were recruited to participate in the Berlin Airlift. In the United States today, there are only 3 known flight-worthy C-54s left.
My name is Timothy A. Chopp, and I'm the president and founder of the Berlin Airlift Historical Foundation. I remember the days long before I got the C-54. Could I really make this happen? And now it's here, and it's been here for 22 years. Thank you so much. The Berlin Airlift was the first time in history that a humanitarian operation was carried out by airplanes. And trying to sustain 2.5 million people, Berliners, strictly by air was a remarkable feat. And the Berliners had a chance to go on the Russian side if they wanted to, but they wanted nothing to do with that. They would rather endure what hardships there were with the airlift and keep free than to give in.
In spite of a wartime alliance that aided in the defeat of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime, U.S.-Soviet relations were always shaky at best. The rampant clash of ideologies, of communism versus capitalism, eventually led to a strong disagreement among the Big Three. Germany was split into 4 sections. The nation's capital, Berlin, was similarly divided, even though it was geographically situated in the Soviet-controlled region. Becoming frustrated with the ambitious undertakings of the Allied powers, who had sought to restore the economic independence of the German nation, Stalin retaliated by blockading half of Berlin in an attempt to diminish Western control and limit Germany's resurgence to economic stability.
I do not believe that Soviet Russia desires war. What they desire is the fruits of war and the indefinite expansion of their power and doctrines. But what we have to consider here today is the permanent prevention of war and the establishment of conditions of freedom and democracy as rapidly as possible in all countries.
While Churchill's famous Iron Curtain speech directly addressed the necessary prevention of war, his resounding emphasis on worldwide democracy was nonetheless exemplified by the Berlin Airlift. Over a 15-month period, and in the face of Stalin and Soviet Russia, an American or British plane landed in Berlin every 3 minutes, supplying over 1.8 million tons of food and supplies. This marked the event as one of the longest-running and most successful international humanitarian efforts in history. Tim and his small crew have made extensive efforts to educate people about this remarkable but relatively unknown event in history. His C-54 has been converted into a flying museum, the first of its type. From the cockpit to the rear exit of the plane, the short walk is a fascinating journey through history. A brief conversation with crew member, Berlin native, and survivor of World War II, Helga Johnson, provided a similar experience.
Well, we had a summer house up in the Baltic Sea, and we wanted to go back to our apartment. And we didn't know if it was still okay. And we had a siren in front of our house. And I said to my mother, if the siren is up there, our house is still standing. And it was still standing. And the thing is that all of a sudden planes flew overhead again. And I said to my mother, I said, my God, we get more bombs. But it was this plane that brought us food. And that was so wonderful. That's why I love this place here.
It can be easy until things start to, what they call snowball on you, start to pile up, things start to fail. Depending on the weather you're in, things you get behind the airplane very quickly. Of course, that's what we train for. We constantly try to load yourself up so when the time does come, you can get through it. And that's another one of the challenges of flying.